Now let's turn to moves to hold Nigeria's armed forces accountable for that ill-fated drone strike in Kaduna State on Sunday, moves which appear to be gathering pace. International rights groups are calling on the Nigerian government to conduct a thorough investigation into the killing of more than 100 civilians during that horrendous air attack. In separate statements, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have called on the government to ensure there is justice for the victims. Amnesty International has accused the military of attempting to cover up what happened after initially describing it as a mistake and later saying suspected criminals were embedded amongst the civilians that were attacked. In the last 2 years, there have been at least 10 drone strikes which have all been explained away as accidents and which have killed hundreds of civilians. So how can the Nigerian government ensure that something similar doesn't happen again?
Residents who were killed got...
All measures will be taken to ensure that future occurrences are averted. And most importantly, the government will go to the root of the issue, and if anyone is found culpable will be punished accordingly. The President approved the commencement of the Pulaku initiative by next month. The Pulaku initiative is the President's unique response as a non-kinetic solution to the challenges in the Northwest. Beneficiary states are Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Kaduna, and for the purpose of equity and justice, we deliberately included Niger and Benue states. We are going to build houses which will complement the efforts of the Right Honorable Speaker, but ours is a complete package as well, including houses, clinics, schools, veterinary clinics, empowerment initiatives, solar energy. It's a complete package of solutions. It's a non-kinetic response to the problems of banditry and kidnapping in the Northwest.
That's Kashim Shettima, who is the Nigerian Vice President. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Country Director of Amnesty International Nigeria, Issa Sanusi. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles, for having me today.
What's your reaction to what the Vice President was saying there?
Well, we will wait to see whether it is going to happen or not. But Nigerians are used to hearing this kind of promises. Whenever this kind of atrocities happen, the government put out this kind of consoling sort of statements. Unfortunately, they rarely hardly materialize. But let us be optimistic and wait and see what will happen this time.
And along the lines of that optimism, many have commended the professionalism of the army under the new Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, and the new Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Labaja, who they say are taking responsibility for this era. They say it's a sign of positive change. Do you agree with that?
Well, when the military admitted and expressed regret is a good development, because in the past we had series of denials and explaining away, which actually show a lot of disdain for the value of life. But that is not enough. We are talking about over 100 people. And this incident is quite different from all others, in the sense that in the first instance, there was a strike that killed people, and there were shouts and calls for people, and people rushed to the scene to help. And while that rescue was going on, people coming to pick up body parts of their families, another strike happened 30 minutes in between. That is really, really something that we should be worried about. If the first one was a mistake, let us say it was a mistake, what of the second one?
That's a very good point. And in those circumstances, do you trust the army to carry out an investigation into itself? Because, I mean, you've accused the military of attempting to cover up what's happened.
Not at all. We don't have any confidence in the ability of the Nigerian military to investigate itself. We have a lot of experiences in the past. We have worked on so many instances and incidences that look like this one. And at the end of the day, the investigations never materialize. But let me make it very clear. An investigation is not about, I don't think it makes sense for anybody to investigate himself, especially when this is not an internal, if it is a military affair, completely, the strike was on a barrack or something. That is, their internal affair. But this is completely different under international humanitarian law. This is a civilian community where unmanned aerial vehicle, was said to have fired on children and women. And another important thing is that what is really an investigation? Investigation is just is not a mere word that you mention to make people forget about the issue or be comfortable with the tragedy they faced. An investigation do 4 distinctive things. Number 1, it establishes the truth, which is very important for justice. Secondly, an investigation brings justice in the sense that it apportions responsibility from the beginning to the end. And number 3, investigation brings reparation. Reparation in the sense of giving remedies, assistance, support to the victims. And the last one is reform. So an investigation brings about these 4 important things. And the reform in the sense that Nigerian military said that they regretted this incident, and if the investigation was thorough, up to international standard, it will bring about a reform, and we will never hear about this thing again in Nigeria.
And this is, of course, not the first such incident. I mean, we've seen some 10 drone strikes in the last 2 years which have hit civilians and have been explained away as accidents. And you have to wonder why this keeps happening. And it's probably because of what you're saying, that there's never been a proper investigation.
Definitely. And
in that thorough way.
Definitely. And that is why, we are saying that for an investigation to be useful, to be meaningful, it has to be transparent, it has to be impartial, it has to be effective, and it has to be thorough. And the findings of that investigation has to be made public. When you kill people, it's not your personal matter. It's a matter that has to do with humanity, and the findings have to be made public. In Nigeria, we have a situation whereby rural people are taken for granted. They are treated as if they are not human beings. And clearly, if you are following what is happening in rural parts of northwest Nigeria, you will shed tears because people are killed almost every day. We only hear about the bigger incidences. Right now, in some parts of Katsina State, we have a situation whereby bandits are amputating farmers. They are amputating farmers for not paying them levy they impose on them to go to their farm. That sounds
absolutely
so what I am saying,
horrendous.
Definitely. And what I am saying is that we have to be very serious. We have to change as a nation. We have to, give human lives the dignity it has. And those rural communities are absolutely living in misery, in poverty, in penury, and everyone knows that. So if we are not giving them support, we are not giving them food, we should not be giving them bombs. And I believe that we have to change things. And I believe that if this government wants to do something, want to bring a remarkable change, President Tinubu has to institute an independent investigation which will consist of experts, which will investigate this incident, and it will become a landmark that will help in addressing this problem. If not, we will continue to have this thing, and they will continue to be explained away, while people are left to live with the impact of the tragedy. I want to give you one example. There was a video that went viral recently of a 6-year-old boy in Zamfara State. And that boy, his parents were killed by bandits. And the boy was recorded on video saying that He wants to grow up, and when he grow up, he will take revenge for his father. There are many children. You just can't count them. So what
That's heartbreaking.
Definitely.
Really heartbreaking.
Definitely, and this is a 6-year-old boy. So what we are trying to say is that we have to begin to take the future of this country very seriously. There is no way we can have prosperity. There is no way, even if you like power, there is no way you can have power if there are no people. So we have to change things, and the incident in Kaduna has to be a decisive point, a turning point, a milestone for this country.
Well, I mean, you'll probably be glad to know, although you probably already know, that the number of voices that support what you're saying are growing, and from very well-known and well-respected groups. I mean, it's not just Amnesty International, there's Human Rights Watch, there's the Northern Elders Forum, and all the rest of them calling for independent investigation and very clear, very credible investigation. Now, you in your statement, you being Amnesty International, of which you're the country director, you've called on the Nigerian government to ensure that there is justice for the victims of that attack. What would represent justice for you in this case? I know you've enumerated things like investigation, but just kind of encapsulate that for us.
Well, the beginning of justice is accountability. There will never be justice without accountability. And what justice does to every situation is accountability. Everyone is asking, how did this thing happen? Why did it happen? Whose error is it? Who gave the information, the wrong information? You know, when people are gathering for a religious festival and you send unmanned aerial vehicle, you know, some of them are imprecise, some of them, you know, they can never be concise, they can never be precise on their targets. And according to international humanitarian law, the military are not allowed to use them. And there is also, according to international humanitarian law, the rule of proportionality. For example, if there are 2 people in a room and you want to, you know, eliminate them, and you just threw a 2 tons bomb, it will end up killing more than those numbers. So these are the things that an investigation, I believe that justice for these people has to begin with an independent, thorough, effective, impartial investigation. And after the investigation, we have to also make sure that there is accountability in the sense that they are adequately compensated. And those who need psychosocial care to get out of the trauma or to manage it should be given that appropriately. I believe that is the beginning, and that is how we can be able to do justice to this kind of situation.
And beyond this specific instance, as you pointed out in your statement, and as we have said repeatedly here on Arise News, there have been lots of other incidents in the past. What is Amnesty International recommending as the best way to bring an end to these kinds of incidents?
Well, in January last year, a similar incident happened in Doma local government in Nasarawa state, where about 40 people were killed. The military promised to investigate and nothing was done. And even recently, we received reports about an attack, a similar attack on a primary school somewhere in the north. We have not completed our investigation. We are still working on it. And the reason why it is taking us now up to 5 months investigating this, we are still trying to establish exactly who was behind it. Was it the state actors? Was it non-state actors? And that is holding us back, but we are continuing with our own investigation. There are many similar incidences that kill 5 people, 10 people. You never even hear about them. So for us to deal with this, I believe that the Nigerian government has to be very clear to all law enforcement agencies. While performing their duties, they have to comply with international humanitarian law and international human rights law. They have to prioritize the protection of civilians. then they have to follow the rules of engagement that protect civilians, because what they are doing, even their work is aimed at protecting civilians. And if it will always end up with civilians being the casualty, that means, you know, there is no point.
Absolutely.
So there is no way these things will end without a very strong, worded commitment to protecting human rights, protecting civilians, and making sure that there is accountability. The problem we have in this country is lack of accountability. Like this incident, it will happen and it will just go away until the next one. So accountability will make sure that the next person that will come and be in charge of manning those unarmed aerial vehicles will make sure that he do the right thing, because he knew the consequences that fell on the last person that made the mistake on Tudumburi village in Kaduna State.
Now, just I understand that you had people, I don't know if you still got them, on the ground at the site of that incident in Kaduna State. What's the latest figure that you've got of the number of people who were killed and injured in that attack? Because, I mean, at one point you said 120 people. The National Emergency Agency, Management Agency was saying 85 people.
Yes. So we have people on ground, and you know, we have our tabulation of the figures. And let me just give you an illustration so that you can have a, you know, an idea of what the figures are. There were two large mass graves, and one of them contained 77 bodies. The other one is also of the same size. And you know, there are, you know, the religious ceremony, Maulid, you know, near people from nearby villages. There were 3 nearby villages, and people from those villages also came. And 17 people from one of the villages were also killed. And up to the time people were taken to hospital, people are losing their lives and injury. So based on what we calculated, based on the figures we have, the people that died are more than 120. Some are even saying 156 or something like that. But this is what we can confirm, and we have our own evidence. But the issue is, you know, one thing that should really worry everyone is that whenever these incidences happen, the way you will understand that we don't value human life is that even the figures of the people that died are edited regularly. Some people will say, well, at the beginning they say 30, and then they say 85, and then, so it just shows you the kind of utter disregard for human life that we have.
Very briefly, because we're almost out of time, beyond this particular incident, I mean, you are, of course, Amnesty International, well-respected global organization. What is your assessment of the general state of human rights in this country? Is the atmosphere improving or getting worse?
Well, I can't say the atmosphere is improving, and but we always stay on the side of hope. This government is just 6 months in office. So far, we have seen things that really worry us about the issue of accountability. The killings on the rural areas continued, and there seems to be no willingness to open investigation on so many atrocities that happened in the last 20, 10 years, 8 years. One of the things that really will touch the mind of everyone is the case of Dadieta, who is a critic of Nigerian government.
We've got about 20 seconds, so you have to make
so
it
he
brief.
was abducted by gunmen in 2019. Up to now, there is nothing about him. And no one is making any effort either to trace him or even investigate the circumstances. So this simple illustration will tell you that human rights actually, there is no any sign of improvement, but we will stay on the side of hope.
Well, we commend you for what you're doing, and we hope the people who make these decisions are listening to what you had to say. Isa Sanusi is the country director of Amnesty International in Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.